Hey guys, welcome back to Vinceville Customs, and today we got a sort of a fun work in progress for you. This is something that's, I would say, is kind of complex, but it's really not. It's just that you got to take a little extra step. So what you see in front of you is a Ka-Zar bust from Bowen Designs, and you see a pair of legs that are going to go with the bust. And the way this came about is a friend of mine I've known for a long time on statue form has always wanted a full-size Ka-Zar statue. And we've always done some brainstorming of statues out there we can convert. But a lot of them, you know, either had armor on it, or it always had boots, or it really didn't fit the pose of the character, and nothing really ever worked out there because Ka-Zar is just a basic human form with a loincloth, and that's it. I mean, other than that, you know, you can't really find a lot of statues out there that'll fit the character or pose. So he also said, you know, what if we sculpt legs onto the bust? I said, that would work, but I said, I'm not really good at sculpting legs from scratch. I said, maybe we could find somebody out there who's a sculptor who could bang it out real fast, but then I could take it from there. So in 2018, I said I was going to Jersey Fest. I said, Troy McDivitt's there. I said, why don't I go up to Troy and ask him if he can sculpt a pair of legs and everything? So I went up to Troy. He's like, oh, I'm not taking on any commissions. I was like, well, you know, all we need is basically a pair of legs for a Ka-Zar bust with bare feet, and that's it. I said, you don't have to make it perfect. You don't have to sculpt it onto the statue. Just a pair of legs, and then I take everything from there. So he's like, okay, I think I could do that pretty fast. So Troy was able to sculpt this pair of legs real quick. He did a really great job, and it works out great for the bust. Now, the only problem is this is sculpted in Sculpty, and Sculpty's, from what I understand and from what I've seen, gets very fragile over time, and it deteriorates and it cracks. Plus, the other thing too is Troy sculpted with armature up the leg, so I can't get a metal rod in there anyway to make Ka-Zar removable. So I told my friend, I said, it's better that we actually take the legs that Troy sculpted and we make resin copies of them. So this way I can add a rod to them, and then we can make sure that they're durable and they'll last a long time, and I can get them on the statue and everything should work out. So what you see now is we have the bust and we have the legs. Right now we have foam core, and I'm going to start measuring out a box, and then we got to make a box with clay and mold, and then make a copy in resin. So you may be wondering, where are we going to put the statue once we're done putting it together? That's the cool thing. So over time, my friend decided to say, what if the Ka-Zar statue is in a perfect scale with this statue? And he had it sent to me, and it works out really well. So this right here, you can see, is a huge saber-tooth tiger from Damtoys. It is a Simoleon Fatals. I'm not really sure where it's from. I don't know the character too well. But all I know is I got the statue in the mail. It's humongous. It's very heavy, but it's really awesome. And it actually works out great with Ka-Zar, because he's going to be like, you know, this is going to be like a centerpiece for him. He's going to have Ka-Zar, and he's going to have this tiger right next to him. I don't know if I'm actually painting the tiger. I think it's more or less we're just going to be putting Ka-Zar together and attaching them to the base. So the idea is, once Ka-Zar is all put together, before we do any paint work, what I have to do is find a spot on the base, because this the way the tiger is, there's all this wood the tiger's walking over, but then there's like this little water stream underneath of it where the factory did clear resin. So what I have to do is sort of figure out where I could put Ka-Zar on there, maybe do a little bit of rock sculpt or tree trunk sculpt, and then maybe I'll have to add a little bit of water around that area. But I also have to design it where Ka-Zar is removable, because if I attach him, we'll never get him in the box and we'll never get him out safely shipping to him. So it's better to have the two pieces removable. So that's kind of where we're at. So you won't see the saber-tooth tiger for a while. We have to focus on Ka-Zar first, get him situated, and then when we're ready to start attaching him to the base, I can open up the box and go from there. So it's a little bit tricky. The statue is very heavy, but once we get that, we'll be pretty good. So right now what I need to focus on is making this box. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this foam core, we're going to make up a box, we're going to get the legs situated in there with some you know, some clay, and then what we'll do is we'll pour the mold on the first side, we'll flip the box over, we'll take out that clay, we'll pour the mold on the other side, we'll have a two-part mold, and we can make up a resin casting. So what I might have to do is sort of figure out if I can put a metal rod in his legs and then cast it up, or if I have to drill it afterwards. Maybe what I can do is I don't really need to worry about this leg because it's kind of at an angle, so I don't know if I get a rod in there. But this one's kind of more straight, so maybe I could put a rod in here. So this way we could put him into a base that way. As long as you have one rod where he's not twisting, it's good. But once it's in resin, it'll secure it up pretty well. So we'll see how it goes when I'm ready to do it. Plus, I told my friend it's also better that we do a mold and resin casting, so this way the first one I make, I could get a better idea if I need to make another pair of legs with a better rod in there, or maybe something more secured, and go from there. So it's going to be a little bit tricky, but we should work it out pretty well. So let's get this box made up. We'll get him legs casted up, and then we'll get him attached to the base, and then hopefully we'll start planning on how we're going to attach him to the Sabertooth tiger base. Okay, so we got the box done and we got the legs in there right away. So what I did is I built this foam core box. Basically what I did is I built it after I was actually doing a lot of the clay work, and then I started putting the pieces around it, and I used hot glue and all that. Now you may be wondering why this piece is at an angle, because you don't really need to build it a square coming down, because that's wasting a lot of, you know, mold. You can see just by going over there, it works out perfectly fine. So that's where we're at with that. That's oil-based clay at the bottom, and I used a hair dryer to soften it up, and I put it all around the feet and all the legs and stuff like that. So when we pour our top mold on, we let that cure, and we flip it around, we take out the clay, and we pour the mold on the other side. Now you may be wondering why there's some metal rods. What's going to happen is it's going to be pouring in this direction, the resin. So the resin comes down to here, and it would come down to here, and probably what would happen is we get some air bubbles. So this way, if I pour the resin here and then it goes in over here, then you have the channel of resin coming up to this foot and coming up around here. So I might have to put another channel in the mold when I actually make it, and I might have to put another one like right here at the heel. I'll worry about that later, because usually what happens is when you make your two-part mold and you first throw in your first copy of resin, you find out where your air bubbles are, where you need to kind of cut in some extra channels, where you need to kind of squeeze some air bubbles out, and also it helps get a lot of that oil from your mold out with the first casting, and then your second and third castings are usually good. Now I don't really need to make this mold amazingly like perfect and everything, only because we're not casting up like 30 of them. We're just need to make like 2 or 3 just for whatever. So this way it's just easier this way. So for right now, we're pretty much set up. All I got to do is pretty much mix up some mold next, pour it in, let that cure for 24 hours, flip it over, do the other one, and then after that we have our two-part mold and we can start making the copies. Alright, so it's the next day. I popped out the clay on the other side. I put a lot of blocks of foam underneath of it so you can kind of see what I did underneath there. So I put some more stuff under there, and it's all nice and secured. So I had to clean out a lot of the clay though, because sometimes there's little chunks that stay there. You got to make sure you get underneath the feet, any between the crevices and stuff. So I got all the clay out, and what I'm going to do next is spray some mold release all over here, so this way when I put on the next part of the mold, it doesn't stick. The little bit of channel over there sort of popped out when I pulled out the clay, but that's not the end of the world. At least I have a sort of an area I know where I could kind of cut it with an X-Acto blade. And along this wall over here, there was some leaking of mold, so that I had to cut all that channel out over there. But that's usually typical stuff that I've done. Like I said, I'm not perfect at this, but at least we'll have a nice mold for these legs. So hopefully by the next time we come back, I'll have the 2 molds separated. I'll cut out the channels, and then we can start making copies. Okay, so I have 3 copies of the legs all casted up. This is the original, and this one over here has a metal rod in the leg going all the way up here. I got it as far as I could just so maybe this would have more support. I'm not sure yet if it's going to work. So what we're going to do right now is I'm going to go in the garage. We're going to try to get Ka-Zar off the bust. I just want to see if I can get him pried off now, and then if I get him pried off, we can figure out which legs are going to work out best for him. And then from there, we'll just start planning on getting him onto that statue base. Okay, so we're going to try to get him off the base. So just looking at him, it looks like this sculpted sash and all this stuff around him is actually part of the base, and he's actually glued into here. At least that's what I think. And then also you can see he's kind of attached in the back. So I'm pretty sure this is a piece, and then the base is a piece. So without trying to break this arm or this weapon, we're going to try to pry off in the back first. Now I don't mind if I make any marks in his back, because I'm going to have to kind of rebuild it anyway because of the way he's glued into the tiger. So let's kind of, maybe we'll get lucky and it'll work out easy. I don't want to... Okay, so Tiger's coming out very easy. I just wish he came out easier. Okay, so I broke the... Well, I guess maybe the Tiger was part of the base. Okay, well, doesn't really matter. Okay, so... Okay, yeah, so the Tiger was definitely casted up with the base, it seems, and he does not want to come out. So that's going to pose a little bit of a problem, but we'll see. I think maybe we can try to get this Tiger off and make our life easier. Tiger's got a metal rod in the leg, so that's why it's not coming out so easy. Okay, so sometimes if you wiggle it, if it's a thin rod, usually they kind of just snap or it comes apart, but this one doesn't really want to, so what we'll try to do is the old-fashioned way of just seeing if we can... Okay, so... The thing is, I don't know how far the rod goes up the leg. Alright, well, let's see if we can try to get him off the base. Well, I think we're going to have to do a saw. I think we got no choice on the matter. I was hoping he would just kind of pop out. Yeah, he's definitely glued into there, but I don't know how far that keys. I don't want to break all this out, so we're going to have to do a saw. So we'll just grab our saw here and just go do it this way. So I'm just going to do that real quick, get that off, and then we'll see how it works when we come back. Okay, so I was wrong. I thought it was actually glued in here, but that's just actually paint caked up in that area, so he's not glued there. He was actually glued into the base from this piece. So what I did is, as I was sawing it, I got to the point where I was able to put a screwdriver in there, and I pried it out, and sure enough, I found out that it's keyed into there. So my mistake, but you know, you never know how these things are actually really attached until you start kind of messing with them. So my next step is, what I got to do is Dremel out a lot of this here, get a lot of this all chopped up and everything, and start trying to get it matched up to one of the legs. And then once that's done, it's a matter of just customizing the sash a little bit more and getting the legs kind of cleaned up and attached, and then we can start getting him on the base, figure that out, and just do the paint work, and then go from there. Alright, so I had a chance to really get in the garage and sort of chop this up and start fitting this area on him, so you kind of see we're getting that body look there. I got to sort of make sure everything is lining up. So I'm not really too worried about if I kind of squish some like Aves or Magic Sculpt here and it becomes a real mess, because I'm going to have to sculpt the loincloth on him anyway. So that's going to, like, a lot of this will kind of get taken down. So I got to sort of make sure that this doesn't go up too high or it doesn't come down too low. So it's got to come like right about there. I want to make sure that the body is twisting correctly, because you know the belly button's got to be like straight on, so the body's looking like that. I can't turn it like this too much because then it's not going to look right. So I gotta sort of play with it as far as I can. We can't go too far that way because it's not going to look right. So it's got to be sort of straight on, but I think it'll work once I get it on there. So what's going to happen is, I got 2 holes there and 2 holes there. I'll put a metal rods. I'll smush this with some Magic Sculpt or Aves, get that on there, and then once that's sort of secured, I'll kind of chop it up a little bit more, then rebuild it and go from there. So I just got to do a little bit of fine tuning. Now what I need to do though is, before I do all that, is really sand down these legs and everything. I really haven't had a chance to do all that, but I just kind of wanted to make sure that this was kind of set up ready. So I'm going to go in the garage, I'll prime this up, I'm going to sand all this stuff down, smooth it out, get everything prepped up, finish, clean up all these mold lines that I have, and then after that just start working on them. So I figure while I'm sanding those down, I'll finish sanding his back, because I did all this A's work back here to fill up the stuff. There's a little bit of markings and stuff, but that'll get all cleaned up. So we're getting there. Just a little bit of prep work, and then we can attach that body and really start working on it. Okay, so time to start attaching Ka-Zar to the leg. So cut out 2 rods. I got all the pieces dremeled out, and everything lines up pretty well in here, like so. I just got to kind of make sure I line it up correctly when I attach it. So I got a little of this extra Aves right now. I'm going to fill in both sides, and then I'm going to use some of my glue and my Insta-Set, and I'm just going to Insta-Set and keep them together, and then I'm going to put them aside and just let this cure up for a couple hours. And then once this is all cured up and I can actually handle it, that's when I'll go back in and Dremel some of these areas out, Dremel some of this part out, and then start rebuilding the whole muscle structure and make sure he fits onto the legs correctly. If I have to take down the waist a little bit, build up the waist, whatever it takes. But this is kind of where we're at. We're lining up correctly. It's just a matter of getting it set. So it's going to look very messy once done because of all the glue. But other than that, it should work out pretty well. I think I just got to cut this one down a little bit more because it's a little too long. But other than that, just going to put it together and then start fine-tuning afterwards. Alright, so I pretty much just, slapped it together. The Aves in there is going to bond up pretty well and hold it together. The glue is just holding it together for now as well. I put a lot of the Aves back here just to kind of fill in that area. So the next step is once this is cured up by tomorrow, I could go in and I could Dremel around these areas around here, sort of rebuild the structure of the muscles, take down some of this area here, take down some of this area here, because this way when I sculpt up his fur shorts, I have to make sure that I don't overbuild and it doesn't look too big. So I got to kind of tweak all this midsection out a lot. But it should work out pretty well. The sword is giving me a little bit of trouble. It might end up where I might have to get like something else of a sword or rebuild it or something. That's kind of just one of those things that's a pain. It might end up breaking on me, so we'll see what happens down the line. It's just the nature of trying to do this stuff without... I wish this stuff was removable and I wouldn't have to worry about it, but that's kind of where we're at right now. So we'll see how this works out. So I'm going to let this kind of cure up for today, come back tomorrow and we'll see how it works out. Alright, so the other day I had a chance to really build up all the Aves after this torso was attached. And then after that, the next day I went in the garage and I did all my sanding and chopping and really kind of fine-tuning this a little bit more. So you can see it actually looks like it belongs to his body now. This section over here was really too wide and it caused weight. It was just like too far out. So I had to do a lot of sanding. I had to take down this area in here a little bit to kind of make it look like it fits him a little bit more, as you can see. It's still very messy around here. Like in this area here, I'm not really worried about this being messy because the fur shorts are going to cover all that. So what I might have to do is just take it down a little bit more. But over here and here, I have to kind of still fix up this area in here because this is still areas that are going to kind of show a little bit, I think. So it's one of those things where I'm going to kind of touch it up a little bit more. And then I'm going to start thinking about how I'm going to do the fur. Now the fur is a little bit tricky. I don't want to just kind of dive into it and do the fur and it looks way too bushy or it doesn't fit the character. So I got to think about it a little bit more and then I'll dive into it. The other thing too is I want to get him to the point where he is ready to be painted. Like everything is actually done on him. He's smoothed out, it's sculpted, and he's ready to go. Then I'm going to pull out the cat statue and I'm going to start working him into that base and get that situated. Because that cat statue is so big and so heavy that I'm going to have to set it up on my roller drawer setup that I have next to my airbrush booth, and that's going to sit there for like a week or two. So I don't want to pull that cat statue out and have it in my way. I want to have him ready to go, all done, and then set him up on the cat statue, and then I could kind of paint him up. I could do the touch-ups on the cat statue, and the project's finished. So that's kind of where I'm at with this. But right now, he's my main focus. But he's almost there. Pretty much just got to do a couple more priming sessions, and I just got to clean up this area here, and I could do the fur. And I'm still trying to make sure I don't break this knife. It's I think however this was done, I think it's a piece of metal, but I just want to make sure I don't snap that or anything. But I still got a little bit touch-ups. I have some marks over here I happen to have done. But other than that, he's looking pretty good. Just just got to do some more fine-tuning. So that's kind of where we're at with it. I guess the next step is once he's pretty much finished up with the ab section stuff, we're going to start sculpting the fur. And then once that's all done, he's primed, ready to go, smooth out, we're going to pop out that big cat statue, and then we're going to have to really try to figure out how to get him attached. I'm going to start working on Ka-Zar's undies. Now, basically looking at online, basically on all the pictures that was sent to me too, it's basically just like a bathing suit, but it's just brown fur. That's pretty much all it really is. There's no belt or anything like that. So I have kind of like some good freedom to kind of sculpt in there and not go overboard. Plus, I don't want to make it too big on him either, too, because I don't want it to be too big furry, but I don't want it to be looking like a tight bathing suit either. So I got to find that middle ground. Now, usually when I sculpt hair, I use Fix-It Sculpt from Aves. I find that Fix-It Sculpt is a little bit more, it's a little bit sturdy, it's not as soft. When it cures up, you're able to kind of do a little bit more with it compared to the regular Aves. But what I've been doing lately, and I kind of find this out like maybe a few months back, is I had a little extra Aves Fix-It Sculpt one night and a little bit of a red epoxy sculpt, and I was working on an item and I just needed to do a filler, so I mixed them both together and I messed with it a little bit, and I liked the consistency. It kind of made it feel a little bit easier to see because the red dye was in here, plus it felt like things were just working a little bit better. So like I've been working on a lot of hair sculpts with this mixture, and it's got like this pink look to it, but it just feels a little bit more, I'm able to work with it better, plus I'm able to see it better than just the white. So that's kind of what I've been doing. So that's what I'm going to do here is I'm going to mix up some of this. It's mostly this with a little bit of this. I mean, I don't mix like equal amounts of A and B, all of it together. It's mostly the Fix-It Sculpt with just a little bit of the red A's or red epoxy sculpt. It gives it that pink look, and it's just easier to see, especially when you work on something that maybe it's got gray primer or something. So I just find this a little bit easier. So I'm going to get this mixed up, and then we'll start sculpting his undies. Hopefully, maybe I can finish it in one session. If I feel that I'm not doing it the way I wanted to, I might have to do it where like I layer a little bit today, layer a little bit tomorrow, and go there. But like I said, this is really not supposed to be super thick, and it's really not supposed to be super tight like spandex. So I think just finding a nice good texture on it with like a little bit of fur look would work well. Okay, so I had to use my dentist tool to do all the sculpt work. I did try a little bit off camera before I attached any of the A's with some brush work, and it didn't come out the way I wanted it to. I wanted to get as much fur as I could on him. So I decided to go with the dentist tool and just kept working and working and working it. Then when I realized certain areas had too much aves, I pulled all that off. I went back in there. So there's a couple of spots I need to go back in and clean up a little bit here and there, but I think we got a nice good look to it. Now the other thing I'm thinking about is paint work. Whereas if I try to use my paintbrush and I did really like, you know, almost looking like hair type of stuff, like his hair on there, it really wouldn't be enough detail to really pull out. So by doing this, when I'm ready to paint it, I can mask it off, I can paint it all a dark brown, and then I can do a light dry brushing brown on it, and I'll pull all that detail out. So that's kind of what I was thinking about when I was doing the sculpt work. So this should work out pretty well. So next step is I'm going to clean it up a little bit more off camera, I'll send some pictures to the client, and then if everything's pretty much ready to go, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the statue all cleaned up, primed up, and ready to go. And then I got to pull out the cat statue, and that's how we have to figure out how we're going to get him attached and where. So it's going to be a thing of sort of maybe having to sculpt a rock or some kind of tree branch, and then from there work out the clear epoxy stuff, and then hopefully he'll be removable. And that's pretty much where we're at. So we got a lot of the hard work done. The next step is just getting prepped for paint and making sure we can attach him to the base. Okay, sort of a little bit of an update off camera. What I did is send some pictures to the client. He actually was able to get back to me fast enough, so it worked out pretty well. So we wanted to do some bunching around the top of it just to bring it together. So he sent me some more pictures of some of the old Ka-Zar stuff. And so we kind of just ran with this, and we broke it up around the top of it. So this was all still soft when I sent the picture, so I was able to break up some of the edges around here, a little bit around there, and it worked out pretty well. So he's pretty much set up. So what I need to do is just prime him and get him cleaned. And then the next step is we're going to pop out the cat statue, and we're going to start getting him set up on there. Now, I talked to him a little bit more. We're going to try to go as simple as possible. We're not going to go try and make it all complex. We just pretty much want to attach him to the base. So we talked about it. I'm probably going to sculpt maybe some kind of like a simple rock. So this way I could put the rock on the base, sort of use some of my clear epoxy cast that I have that I've done in the past with some testing, just to kind of get some extra water around the base and the rock, and then get him set up on it, and that's pretty much it. So it's pretty straightforward. It should go pretty fast once I get the cat out of the box. And sculpt a little bit of a rock, paint it up, attach him to it, and we should be pretty good to go.